Inshallah, this would be what we discussed, inshallah ta'ala, would be basically the ilm of the issue. So marriage as a union of souls, what's the ilm of this? What's the knowledge regarding marriage as a union of souls? The ilmi part. So what we've covered, I think, is the ilm that is necessary to understand marriage as a union of souls. However, ilm is not enough, as we said. There has to be amal, there has to be work, there has to be striving. So the next part we could say is more amali, more what do I need to do. So we learned about who I am, what happiness is. Jazakallah khairan. May Allah bless you, inshallah, a good fa'al. Jazakallah khairan. What happiness is, we learn about marriage being a union of souls, all of that's ilm. And I think, wallahu a'lam, very important ilm for the age in which we live. Very important ilm, practical ilm for the age in which we live. And all of that, hafidhakumullah, all of that taken from the Quran and Sunnah. All of that taken from the words and advice of the ulama, awliya, all of that taken from our heritage, our turath. The importance of akhlaq. And then to label the akhlaq. You've probably heard the word. If you don't label it, you don't know it. So we mention the akhlaq so that we can label them and we can define them. What does it mean to be patient? What does it mean to be grateful, shakir? What does it mean to have rifq, to have gentleness? So now we've labeled the akhlaq. So we have an idea of them. And we have an idea of the opposites. These are the akhlaq that build a marriage, that build spiritual intimacy in a marriage. And the opposites are the ones that break a marriage, that corrode a marriage, that erode a marriage. The akhlaq we don't want. Now we know, if we had time, we could feel what it's like to be patient. We could feel it. Close your eyes, bring to mind the idea of patience, and then feel the emotion of patience. If we had time, it would be a really useful exercise, I think. We could feel the opposites. Could feel what it's like to be ungrateful in order to know it better. Because remember, an akhlaq is not an idea. It's a state of the soul. It's a hal, it's a condition, it's an emotion, it's an energy, it's a mood inside of me. Are you with me? That's what a khuluq is. So the khuluq of the negative khuluq of being ungrateful, we know what it means. Now what does it feel like? Can you take 10 minutes, not 10 minutes, 10 seconds. Bring to mind being ungrateful and feel it. As an exercise, as a practice, so that we feel what we are and then we know what we are and we know the feeling and we know to resist the feeling. One of our teachers, in the wird, in the dhikr of his morning and evening, when he makes the adhkar, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ash-shakki wa-shirki wa-nifaq. And then there are many evil akhlaq that he asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protection from. What he does, he told me this years ago and I never forgot it. He said when he makes those du'as, he feels the akhlaq that he's asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refuge from. He feels it. So, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-nifaq. He feels nifaq. What am I asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protection from? So we can feel it. And ultimately, we need to know beautiful akhlaq at the level of feeling, at the level of emotion, because that's what they are. They're not just ideas floating in our minds, they're feelings. They're feelings that then generate words and deeds. If I say an ungrateful word, if I do an ungrateful act, where does it come from? It comes first from a feeling, a hal, inside me. And then it's expressed. But it starts inside out. So to know what that is, at the level of spiritual sensitivity, I'll know immediately what's happening before I express it, before I do it. Are you with me? I can feel myself becoming ungrateful. And then I said, no. A'udhu billah. Astaghfirullah. Ittaqillah. Tell my nafs, fear Allah. Because I can feel myself becoming ungrateful. Before I say it and then I say, astaghfirullah. Well, that's good. It's good to say astaghfirullah after I've been ungrateful. It's much better and intended to stop it at the level of mood and feeling. So that's ultimately the haqiqah of akhlaq. And the more we know, the more we develop, the richer our feelings will be. The richer our feelings will be. Can you imagine what it's like to feel awe of Allah? Those feelings are the ways in which I speak to Allah Azza wa Jal. Those feelings are really my language with Allah. More essential than my words. True or false? What does it feel like? And imagine a life of developing that feeling of awe. And it develops, and it develops, and it develops. And then my life is a life of rich feeling with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All kinds of feelings. Imagine. All the most beautiful, noble feelings. That's what's happening inside me as I live. As I am, as I speak, as I talk, as I walk, as I'm in pain, as I'm in difficulty. But my heart is this garden of feelings with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, constant, constant, constant. That's beautiful akhlaq. And when that happens, my words will be beautiful, my actions will be beautiful, my reactions will be beautiful, my no actions will be beautiful, everything will be beautiful. So, let's assume now, as we did, marriage is a union of souls, a union of akhlaq. In one way, you can say marriage is a fellowship, is a suhba of beautiful akhlaq. Marriage is a fellowship. A fellowship is whenever you have two. That's a fellowship, that's a suhba, right? So, marriage is really the first suhba and the most intimate suhba I will have with another individual. That fellowship, yarhamukallah, that fellowship of suhba. Now, we spoke about the ideal, right? Our marriage is ideal. Is my marriage this ideal suhba of two people mutahabbin, with hub, love for one another, with the most beautiful akhlaq, striving to be khalifas of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's the ideal. That's the ideal. Life is not about ideals in the sense of actuality, reality. We seek an ideal. We strive for an ideal. But marriages are of all types, of all colors, of all sizes, of all cues. And I may have a marriage that's not ideal. That's not the ideal suhba. That has its challenges. That's not a place where I think I'm really realizing my potential as a khalifa, or I'm really realizing my ruhani potential. Yet, Allah knows. Allah placed you where He placed you for a hikmah. Allah placed you where He placed you for a hikmah, for a wisdom. And as we get older, not the idea that my spouse is my one and only soulmate in that Hollywood, Bollywood style, but we realize, especially if we're a Muslimah, striving to be a mu'minah, striving to obey Allah Ta'ala with all our deficiencies and faults, we start to realize as we grow older, what do we realize? What do you think I'm about to say? If you followed my train of thought. We start to realize, hey, there's a lot of wisdom why she is my wife. There's a lot of wisdom why he is my husband. And maybe I didn't see that before because my heart was not ready to see it. And maybe I don't see it, which is unfortunate, which is really unfortunate. Why are they my spouse? Why did Allah choose them? And I'm trying in my own small way to obey Allah and to get close to Him and to be near to Him. What's it with him? What's it with her? What do they mean to, what does Allah mean for them to teach me? What does He mean for them to reveal about me what I need to know, what I need to see? What are they meant to bring out of me that I need to change? How are they there to help me, though it may not be in some circumstances that I think that they're helping me? Oh, but they are. Oh, but they are. So, there's always a hikmah. There's always a divine wisdom. And as we get older, I think, those of you who are married, I think you start to realize that. You start to realize what in your spouse you're meant to appreciate because it brings out of you that which you need to change, you need to modify, you need to learn from. And then you pay close attention. Then you are more appreciative and more grateful. And then it becomes more of a spiritual bond because the relationship revolves around Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, if the marriage is not ideal, and no marriage is, what are some of the rules of marital change? How do I make it better? How do I make my marriage better? Number one, change begins with me. I think we already did that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا فَابْعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا فَابْعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. This is the Bayt al-Qasid. إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيمًا خَبِيرًا. Allah Ta'ala says, in the case of a marital split or a marital problem, if you fear, discord between the two, in the old days, فَبَعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ, then send a mediator from his side, وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا, and send a mediator from her side. This is the point. إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. If they both truly want to make it work, Allah will facilitate that. if they truly want to make it work, Allah will make it work. Allah will facilitate. Allah will grant His tawfiq. Tawfiq is Allah Ta'ala's special catalytic barakah. You know what the catalyst is, right? Something added to a reaction to make it go faster. The reaction could take a long time. Days, years, maybe more than years, decades. And then you add a catalyst, and the catalyst speeds it up, right? So tawfiq is like that divine catalyst that Allah Ta'ala gives to speed up things, to make things happen, to produce change. إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. If they truly both want islah, if they both want what is good and reform of themselves, Allah Ta'ala will facilitate it. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيمًا خَبِيرًا. Allah Ta'ala is alim. Allah knows all things. And Allah Ta'ala is khabir. Allah knows the inner world, say some of the ulama. Alim, Allah knows everything. And khabir, in a more taqyidi sense, Allah Ta'ala knows specifically what's in my heart. Khabir. Allah knows what's in my heart. So this has a story. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala an sent a man, one of these Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, to go and mediate between two people. He came back and said it didn't work. Sayyidina Umar said, can't be. From what he knew, probably as well of ilm of the couples and their nature, their challenges, etc. He recited this verse. He said, tell them, إِن يُرِيدَ إِصْلَاحًا يُوَفِّقِ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُمَا. Tell them to fix their niyyah. Tell them to fix their niyyah. If they want it to work, Allah Ta'ala will facilitate. This is the general rule, And so he went back and he told him, you get your intention. First, you fix your intention. Have husnul dhan in Allah Ta'ala. Have good opinion of Allah Ta'ala. And tell them, he came back and he said it worked. So, I have to want change. I have to want a better relationship, truly. And hafidhukumullah, I want to change me first. How many relationships there has not been change because one side stubbornly does not want to change. Stubbornly does not want to see their faults, does not want to admit their faults, does not want to admit their role in the marital dysfunction. And then, no matter how much counseling you do, nothing will change. Nothing will change. And sometimes, the people can be people who are very knowledgeable in deen. Studied for many years, know all about akhlaq, know about all the bad akhlaq, know all about the good akhlaq. People who are, alhamdulillah, trying, struggling, but yet there is no desire to change. There's no desire, personal responsibility. I am the problem. The Muslim usually, as a general rule, there are exceptions, the first response of the believer is what? What did I do wrong? Something happens to me in life. Ya Allah, what did I do to deserve this? What did I do? Meaning, Ya Allah, what did I really do to deserve this? Not, Ya Allah, what did I do to deserve this? Meaning I didn't deserve it. No. What did I do? Did I commit some dhanb? Did I neglect Allah Ta'ala? Why did this happen to me? Because of what I did. That's the healthiest in general. It's a general rule. There are exceptions. A general rule is, what did I do wrong? And I did do something wrong. And Allah is never unfair. And Allah is never unjust. What did I do? Let me find out what I did. That's the first reaction. So in a marriage with challenges, what am I doing wrong? Not what? Not what? What are you doing wrong? And let me tell you the things you're doing wrong. Let's make a list so you can see where you've gone wrong. Remember? The subtle, latent tongue of the heart is like, I'm Jibreel and he's Shaitan, or I'm Jibreel and she's Shaitan. That's the unstated expression of so much of what marital couples are saying in counseling without saying it. I'm Jibreel, alayhi salam, and he's Shaitan. Right? So I have to want to change. And the Muslim is not someone who says, what do I have to change? It's how much do I have to change? Show me what I need to change. Ya Allah, show me what I need to change so I can get closer to you and beautify my akhlaq. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqa warzuqna ittiba'a wa arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinaba. Ya Allah, show me truth as it is and help me follow it. Because there's a difference between seeing truth and recognizing it. Sometimes we see things, but we don't recognize them. We see it, I see it, but I don't recognize it. I don't really recognize that, yes, that is truth. I see truth, but I don't recognize it. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqa, that's what it means. Show me truth as it is, meaning truth. Warzuqna ittiba'a, and then give me the wherewithal, give me the strength to follow it. Seeing, recognizing, following. Three different things. How many of us see, but we don't recognize, we don't follow? How many of us see and recognize, but we don't follow? How many see, recognize, and follow? Very few. Very few. Number two, I have no control over the other person. وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةُ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. No one bears the burden of another. No one bears the responsibility of another. I don't have control over my wife. I don't. She doesn't have control over me. I can't force her to change. I can't make her change. She can't make me change. I don't have control over her. I have control over me. Allah has given me control over me. And even then, I can't control the outcomes. I have to rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the outcomes. All I can do is work. All I can do is sa'i. All I can do is to strive and struggle. And Allah will bring the outcome when and how He wants. And if you've ever counseled, sometimes you have cases incredible. You know, couples, subhanallah, very different in character. Very, very different. Separate. And they have kids, and they have children. They get back together. And they separate. And they get back together. And they separate. And it's almost a divorce. Or it is a divorce. A first pronouncement of divorce. And they get back together. And then they're living happily ever after. Or as happy as can be. And then you wonder, how did this happen? Years. Differences. Could not. And then you're so happy to hear, we're happy. We're together. We've been together now for many years. Alhamdulillah. How? It certainly wasn't the counseling. In reality, it wasn't the advice. Some dua of someone, some salih, some teacher, some tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah ta'ala brings His tawfiq, and sometimes the impossible, what seemingly impossible, happens. We can't control the outcome. We can only control our striving and our struggle. So I have no control over the other. Number 3, if I change, the fellowship changes. The fellowship of marriage. If I change, the fellowship of marriage will change. True or false? Let's say the other side doesn't change. Let's say they don't do any work whatsoever. But I change. Will the marriage change? Yeah. If the marriage is the sum of souls, the sum of akhlaq, if I change, the marriage will change. The sum of that akhlaq is going to become more beautiful. The sum of that akhlaq is going to be beautiful. So if I change, I will, by Allah's tawfiq, change the marriage. Even if he, she is doing nothing. Right? It's like water. One side doesn't add anything to the bowl, but one side does. The water increases. Something happens. There's a change in the marriage. I'm introducing at the least a catalyst. I am changing the marriage. If I have children, for example, is the marriage changing? For sure. If one parent doesn't step up and change their akhlaq, but the other one does, the children have a better environment, they have a better atmosphere. I don't have to wait. I shouldn't wait for the other person to change. I should change. Fourthly, if I change, it will likely impact the other. If I change, it will likely impact the other in all of the most exceptional circumstances. Because if my husband, if my wife has any good in them, and I'm sure they do, they will be affected by kindness, by love, by appreciation, by caring, by service, by patience, by forgiveness. They will be affected by that, except in rare occasions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ. The good and the evil are not the same. وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ. They're not the same. Allah ta'ala has made in good hasana a potential, an energy that's very different from the dark energy of the sayyi'ah. idfa' billati hiya ahsan. Right? Defend, look at this, defend yourself with that which is better. Repel harm with the shield of beauty. Repel harm by the shield of beauty. idfa' billati hiya ahsan. So don't fight like with like. Don't fight fire with fire. You know? There's a story of Sidi Mu'tasim. Sidi Mu'tasim is the head of Al-Madina that we're a part of with the Seminary. He was doing a tour, I think of, was it Morocco or Spain? And he was leading it. And with him was Sheikh Muhsin. Sheikh Muhsin is mashallah, an alim, a very saintly man. And he was the mentor of the group. And he had told them, Mu'tasim had told everyone to purchase their tickets in advance, many times, to go from one city to another. A couple came at the airport and said, we don't have tickets. And it's going to cost us a lot of money to buy them on the spot. And Mu'tasim said, and then they said, well, you didn't tell us. And he said, he was younger then, of his many lessons, I said, well, I did tell you. And they said, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. And he said, well, then how come all of those people have tickets? You know, how did they get tickets? And they insisted. And then he told them, buy your tickets. Then he went to Sheikh Muhsin. And he told Sheikh Muhsin. And Sheikh Muhsin said something like, Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah. You fight fire with fire? You fight fire with fire? Is this what Al-Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do? Is this how he would act? So he called the group together. Right? And he said, you trust me? And they said, yeah, we trust you. He said, everyone trust me then. Give me $10. Each of you, trust me. Give me $10. Please. Would you do that? He said, of course. Everyone gave $10. He took that and he went to the couple and he said, forgive us that you didn't purchase your tickets. Here's the money for your tickets. And they said, no, you didn't have, why did you do that? And then they were so loving and so kind and so regretful in a good way and so pleased and so overjoyed by that gesture. Mu'tasim said, aha, you know, idfa' billati hiya ahsan. The best armor, the best weapon is ihsan for those of us who can. The best action, the best response, the best defense is not justice. The best defense is not justice. Justice is only when ihsan doesn't work after a long effort of ihsan. In general, ihsan is always the best defense. So Allah Ta'ala says, فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. And then if you respond with ihsan, فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ. And then the one between you and him, there is animosity. كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ will become like a very close bosom friend. وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا. And that's not possible except if you have patience. Patience to do that. And how long does it take? It could take a while. Rome was not built overnight. Don't expect, I do it once, do it twice. I have to persist. And Allah Ta'ala says, فَإِذَا الَّذِي, you know, show ihsan. فَإِذَا is like indicating in language and then suddenly. فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ. You know, keep doing it. Not expecting anything from them. Expecting from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As my wife grew older, she mentioned to me, I'm not having patience with you except for Allah. I'm not having patience for you. It's for Allah. And you'll be surprised how much patience I can have. You'll be surprised. You know, I'm not doing it for you, she says sometimes. And I love that. I love hearing that. And it's music to my ears. I'm not doing it for you. You know, I didn't look after these kids and raise them and homeschool them for you. For Allah. That changes everything. That changes everything. How much more energy can you have? How much more can you give? How much more can you absorb for Allah Azza wa Jal? It's not for you. It's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah Ta'ala says, فَإِذَا الَّذِي. And then suddenly, the gift comes from Allah. فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ. Then suddenly, you had this bad relationship with someone. فَإِذَا, suddenly, now it's completely inverted. Allah Ta'ala says, وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. From adawa, which is one word to describe it, وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. Wali is someone who's very close to you. Wali is someone who looks after all of your interests. Hamim is someone very, very tenderly intimate with you. It's like the ultimate friend. Your enemy becomes not your enemy. Do you see? Your enemy doesn't not become your enemy. Your enemy doesn't become friendly. Your enemy doesn't become, good to you. He becomes your closest, most loving friend. Because وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ. Good is not like evil. Want to know what good does? This is what good does. This is what ihsan does. Sometimes, for people who have divorces, there's one sister I remember, subhanallah, very difficult. There was no other way except to divorce in this instance. And he was very demanding. And she said, take it all. Take it all. You want it? Take it. I give it to you. You want this? Take it. And Allah gave her so much. Allah protected the children from the harms of that divorce, and there were significant harms. Allah neutralized her husband. Allah protected her. Allah gave her so much because of her ihsan. And she was a muhsina. It was an incredible example. I will give you details, but it's going to take too much time. And lastly, if I change, Allah gives barakah. وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِنْ شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Allah Ta'ala says, if you're grateful, then I will give you more. If you're grateful, and part of being gratefulness is preserve the marriage. Protect it, preserve it, keep it, maintain it, despite the difficulties, unless they are not impossible to endure. In a shari'i sense, you should not leave. In a shari'i sense. If in a shari'i sense you should stay, it's absorbable, protect it, preserve it. Be grateful for the ni'mah of that. وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. The fastest way to get more from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to be grateful. Those, I would say, of the 5 principles of marital change. That ideal suhba, I don't have. Okay, what can I do? I can do a lot. I can do a lot. I can strive a great deal. And this is what I do. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring khair. How do I do it? I'm going to simplify it because of time. So we have time for Q&A and reflections at the end. Changing akhlaq, as we said last week, and last year and the year before, and every day, is the reason why Allah made me as a Muslim. The essence of my Islam is my beautiful akhlaq. And all of the hadith about the importance of akhlaq. The essence of Islam is the state of my salam. The essence of Islam is the surrender of my qalb. And the surrender of my qalb is the state of my qalb. And the state of my qalb is the state of my akhlaq. To surrender to Allah Ta'ala and to remove from me every negative trait that Allah doesn't love. Now, that process of changing akhlaq is what the ulama have studied in the science of tazkiyatun nafs, purification of the soul. Because it's the essence of deen. It's the essence of ihsan. The essence of ihsan is to worship Allah like you see Him. And ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tara. Meaning my heart is clean, so clean, it's like I see Him. Meaning my heart is so clean, there's no dirt or stain or ugly akhlaq that veils me from seeing Allah with my heart, meaning feeling His nearness as though I see Him because I cannot see Him with my eyes. Meaning, my heart is so beautiful with beautiful akhlaq that I see His names and attributes in everything. Therefore, I quote unquote see Him, subhanahu. This journey of beautifying my akhlaq is what the ulama call tazkiyatun nafs, the field, the science of purifying the heart. And it has its ilm, and it has its amal. It has its knowledge, and it has what I need to do. So part of what we discussed in this marriage seminar, part of that was tazkiyatun nafs, aspects of it, as it relates to marriage being a union of the souls. How do I do it? That's a science. That's a life struggle. Of the most beautiful and powerful means to do that, we could say, in summary, let's say 3 or 4. One is dua. One is dua. The easiest way is dua. The easiest way is dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ask Allah to change my akhlaq. If I'm not patient, ask Allah to make me patient. If I'm not someone with haya, with modesty, ask Allah to make me modest. If I'm not someone who is truthful, ask Allah to make me truthful. If I'm not someone who is patient or grateful, ask Allah to make me patient or grateful. It is as easy as that. 2 days ago, I wrote to one of my teachers, Sheikh Abdul Rahman from Cape Town. I remember in a book years and years ago that I was part of in some way, one of the students of Imam Al-Haddad radiallahu ta'ala an, one of his very, very senior, I think his most beloved student, said something, and I could never find the quote in English, in Arabic, the actual words that he said. But he said something like this. He said, if you knew the reality of dua, you would know it's all you need to reach your Lord. Said, if you knew the reality of dua, you would know it's all you need to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, make me reach you. And I keep saying that every day, 5 times a day, 10 times a day, with a heart that's present. And Allah is Al-Kareem. Allah will answer. Allah will answer. So like that, part of my true intention of change, do I really want to change? Do I really want to change? One measure of that is, am I making dua to change? Because dua is the easiest thing I can do. Ya Allah, help me change. What's harder than that? You know, if I want to change to become more patient, I have to resist when I'm not patient. And that's part of purifying my soul. I do the opposite. So when I feel myself becoming impatient, I have to impose upon myself to be patient. Fight it. I have to fight it internally. And that's the greatest battle you and I will ever face in life. The battle for beautiful akhlaq. Nothing is more difficult than that. Nothing in life. Nothing is more beautiful than that. Because it's the deepest, internal, incessant struggle and mujahada. It's a constant struggle. The Muslim, say the awliya, is killing their nafs 1,000 times a day in that struggle of beauty internally. You're killing your nafs 1,000 times a day, and every time you kill it, it's resurrected. And then you kill it again, and it's resurrected. It's the struggle of a life, and it's the goal. And the fruits of that are nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in ways that are inexpressible. To be near to Allah with akhlaq is the nearest you can get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because as we said, it's mirroring Allah's names and attributes at your level. What could be closer than that? The journey of akhlaq. So, to be patient, I must fight my impatience. إنما العلم, says the text of Rasul, إنما العلم بالتعلم. Knowledge comes with struggling for knowledge. تعلم, to struggle for knowledge. إنما الحلم بالتحلم. عفوا, بالتحلم. Hilm, forbearance, comes with struggling to forbear. الحلم بالتحلم. You know, to reach the akhlaq of being forgiving. We said, right, the mouse that abuses a lion, and the lion is a lion, and the lion says, okay, and behaves like a mouse. That's hilm. The lion can exact punishment, but the lion leaves the mouse and behaves like a mouse. That's hilm. So hilm, that noble khuluq, it's by struggling to be in hilm. Al-hilmu bit-tahallum, continuing to struggle. As-sabr, wa innama as-sabru bit-tasabburi. Sabr comes with continuing to struggle to be in sabr. وَمَن يَتَصَبَّرْ يُصَبِّرْهُ اللَّهُ. And whoever struggles, Allah will make them patient. Whoever struggles in patience, وَمَن يَتَصَبَّرْ, whoever struggles to be patient, يُصَبِّرْهُ اللَّهُ, Allah will make them patient. So part of that struggle is what? Going against the ugly akhlaq when I learn what they are, and struggling and fighting to do the opposite. When I don't want to serve, what do I do? What do I do? I force myself to serve. I make myself serve others. I make myself humble. I lower myself until it becomes delightful, until I love it. And until I can do that naturally, and it's part of me, then it's a khuluq. When beautiful akhlaq comes without thinking, then it's a khuluq. Up to that point, it's still a struggle. It's still struggle, it's still work. So what could be easier? I have to do that. But if I had the choice between that and just making dua, what's easier? Dua. And dua will make that easier. Allah can do whatever He wants. Allah can just make you sabir. That's not how He usually works. But with your dua, Allah can make it very easy. Allah can make it very fast. Allah can make it very delightful that you love to show patience. وَمَا ذَلِكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ بِعَزِيزٍ. Allah can make you struggling for your khuluq so pleasing to you that you love the difficulty of that. Years ago, we were traveling with Sheikh Mukhtar, we were in Morocco. And I think we were in Fez, I can't remember exactly. And we were hungry. Brothers traveling together, we hadn't eaten during the day, and everyone was really hungry. There were probably, 10, 12 of us. We were at a particular maqam of one of the awliya. And then we were there visiting him, qaddasallahu sirra. And then the people of the maqam, they unrolled this sufra, this tablecloth on the floor. They unrolled it, this long one. And we looked at it and we thought, what? Alhamdulillah, food. We're really hungry and it's a big one. And they look like very generous people. May Allah bless them. We can have some food. And then what did they do is, they put on the sufra, I think either prayer beads, or some books on dhikr, on awrad. That's what they put on the sufra. It was a table of food for the soul. Was not a table of food for the stomach. And when we saw that, and I remember Sheikh Mukhtar saying, remember this, because I remember the idea of struggling for akhlaq. He said, I was so happy. I was so happy. And I told myself, look what you expected, and what was given was better. What was given was better, and now you have to hold yourself You have to hold yourself, and you didn't get what you wanted. And you have to wait for another few hours. What's the big deal? But he said, I was so happy. I was so happy, and I told myself, look, you don't get what you want. Be patient. Allah can make it easy. Allah can give you that, where you love struggling for akhlaq. And I love going against my nafs. I love it. Allah can make it easy. And then then you're already, you could say, flying in nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, do the opposite. Dua. And a third one, we would say, just because of brevity, is what's called muraqabah. Muraqabah is to watch your akhlaq inside your qalb. To be in a state whereby I'm always aware, وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ رَقِيبًا. Allah is always in muraqabah of everything. Allah is always aware. Muraqabah is to be vigilant, to be aware, to be mindful. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ رَقِيبًا. Allah is over everything, vigilant, aware, watchful, mindful. Every detail, at every level of existence, every strata of my being, my words, my deeds, my feelings, my thoughts, my consciousness, Allah is aware of every strata of my being, this moment. So muraqabah is to remind myself that Allah is watching me with this depth of watchfulness, and to be aware of my akhlaq at every moment. What's happening in me? Now, it starts with what's happening with me externally. What am I doing? What am I saying? And then it's, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What's happening in me? The moods in me at this moment. Allah is watching a feeling. What feeling? Allah's watching all the time what's happening inside, the moods, the energies. Subhanah. That's muraqabah. And to be in that state all the time. Meaning when I forget, I remember Allah is watching. And I reconnect to being in muraqabah. The ulama, awliya speak about muraqabah as one of the most powerful dhikr of Allah. Because it's a dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a remembrance of Allah with the heart, with the qalb itself. Muraqabah. It's what we would call divine mindfulness versus, mindfulness in secular psychology, in secular, in secular spirituality. The idea of mindfulness, being mindful of yourself, being mindful of you doesn't mean being mindful of Allah Azza wa Jal. If I'm mindful in that secular sense, mindfulness meditation, and Allah is not involved, then that's ghafla. That's heedlessness. Mindfulness without Allah is heedfulness, is heedlessness, is ghafla, is the definition of ghafla. To be mindfulness of me, but not mindful that Allah is watching me, or not doing it for Allah Azza wa Jal, or not in dhikr of Allah Ta'ala, that's just about me. And when I'm only absorbed by me, that's the definition of being heedless and ghafla, in a state of ghafla. But divine mindfulness, which is much more sophisticated, much more powerful, much more real, is Allah watching me, and therefore I am watching my akhlaq. Because I know Allah's watching me. And the more that I know Allah's watching me, the deeper I look in me. With me, the deeper I look. The deeper I look, the more I will find. The deeper I look, the more, I'm going to use this word, authentic I will be. The more transparent I will be. The more real I will be. Because now I'm aware of myself at deeper levels. And many of us may not be aware of what we're feeling, of the emotions inside of us. We're completely unaware of what happens in us. Only after we do something, we think, oh my God, what did I do? But I wasn't aware of everything that started in me. the feeling, the emotion, the thought, completely blind to that. So muraqabah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make me better me, more knowing of me, more critical constructively of me, and therefore is going to help me deal with those negative akhlaq before they become an energy that must be expressed in word or deed. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala gives the example of a horse. You know, it's easier to stop a horse before it reaches full gallop. So before my nafs is now galloping with all of that energy, and then I have to stop it, and it takes a long time to stop a horse when it's in full gallop. The moment the horse of my nafs starts to walk, I stop it. And then I don't have to worry about it galloping so far and then finding it so difficult to stop it. And that's partly because of a constant practice of muraqabah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And lastly, hafidhakumullah, the 10 laws of marital change. I'm going to only mention them, and then if you have any questions or comments. Bismillah. Marriage reflects Allah's Jamal and Jalal. So all of this we could speak about in more detail, but as brief as I can, Allah Ta'ala is majestic and beautiful. All of life is majestic and beautiful. Majestic is difficulty, trial, tests. Beauty is affluence, goodness, ease. Life is both. Ergo, marriage is both. Marriage is an expression of Allah Ta'ala's beauty, because everything we see of beauty in the world, every expression of beauty in existence is because of Allah Ta'ala's names of beauty. Rich, Al-Ghani, Al-Mughni. Ease, Al-Basit. Goodness, Al-Barr. And every manifestation of difficulty in life is a manifestation of Allah Ta'ala's names of majesty. Al-Azim, the tremendous. Al-Qahar, the compeller, the irresistible. Al-Muntaqim, the one who takes vengeance. Al-Qabid, the one who constricts, versus Al-Basit, the one who expands. So marriage, looked at in this lens, is a way for me to see with my heart Allah's beauty and majesty in the ups and downs of marriage. Therefore, I know Allah through marriage. I know Allah, more about His names and attributes through the difficulties and challenges of marriage, and there's no other social institution that will allow me to know Allah as well as I can than marriage. In general, marriage was, when did marriage start? In Jannah. And marriage is the only institution that lasts until Jannah. Ibn Khaldun will not last until Jannah. You know, Al-Madina Institute will not last until Jannah as an institute, as an institution, but marriage will. And therefore marriage is a very profound way for the seeker of Allah to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A good marriage is happy enough. There is no bliss, and it's not hell. A good marriage is happy enough. If you want pure happy, you're going to be very disappointed, because pure happy is only in Jannah. And pure happy is the Hollywood idea, the Bollywood idea of happiness. A good marriage is good enough, meaning, on average, alhamdulillah, it's good. And I should be grateful for that. I should be grateful for that. If marriage was all bliss, there'd be no need for me to seek Allah. As a human being, I seek Allah Ta'ala when in dunya dunya does not fulfill all of my needs. And therefore, the nature of dunya, as Allah made it, is dunya pushes me away, pushes me to Allah. If it didn't push me away, I would forget Allah Ta'ala. And therefore, if my spouse was perfect, it wouldn't give me the energy to seek that which is truly perfect. So all of the challenges in life are really meant to drive us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Marriage is a training ground for my nafs. Marriage is the ultimate training, tazkiyah, purification ground for me. My relationship with my wife, my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my children, all tells me a lot about me and a lot about my akhlaq. My marriage is a reflection of me and my choices. One of the salihun, he says, you know, inni la'asillaha, I disobey Allah. Wa ara athara dhalika fi imra'ati. And I see the effects of that in the way my wife behaves to me. I disobey Allah Ta'ala, and I see the effects of that disobedience in my marital relationship. How many marriages have challenges because we disobey Allah Ta'ala? We never think that that's a cause of marital dysfunction, but it is. All of my choices have consequences. Every disobedient has a ripple. That ripple will break on my shore. And it can break on my personal shore, my emotional shore, my psychological shore. How many psychological problems are because of dhunub? Not all of them, but how many? Sometimes many. Oftentimes many. Not all, but oftentimes many. And that disobedience will break at the shores of my married life as well. Changing my marriage starts with me. And two more. The best offense and defense is ihsan. And lastly, let me make sure to exhibit the akhlaq I was born to manifest, especially in this age, when the definition of marriage is now, we have to say, when we speak about marriage, a marriage between a man and a woman. We have to say that, because even that basic truism has been eroded. And so too have all the akhlaq of marriage. Is it any more sensible in the modern world to have haya? No, it's considered something medieval. Is it any more sensible in the modern world to have loyalty and fidelity in marriage? No, not really. Not really. It's perfectly acceptable not to be loyal. And it's just a consequence of what? My marriage was toxic, and therefore I had to be disloyal. And so many cases where important, astaghfirullah, celebrities, as Sheikh Muhtar says, black holes, they're not stars, black holes, simply leave because they weren't happy. I wasn't happy, I wasn't fulfilled. I couldn't find myself. It was toxic. I couldn't be authentic. It wasn't really, it wasn't really what I needed. It wasn't where I was, wasn't where I was at. And then they leave. So all of the basic akhlaq in our time, all of what was ma'ruf, known and therefore good. Ma'ruf is known. Ma'ruf also means good. All of that which was known as good has now become munkar. Munkar is bad but unknown. So all of that which is ma'ruf, good, known to be good by the social consensus, now is munkar, unknown and evil. So all of these akhlaq we speak about are almost non-existent. Meaning, rarely can you have a conversation with someone on the basis of fundamental principles. You can't speak about, well, we should not do that because of lack of haya. What? That's not a constant anymore. Truthfulness is not a constant really anymore. Service is not a constant anymore. So all the more reason for us, inshallah ta'ala, to revive in this age as Muslims, to be revivers of deen in this age, some might say, is to revive akhlaq. To revive deen in this age, some would say, and it would be a good argument to make, is to revive akhlaq. Not only ilm and knowledge, which is important, but reviving ilm doesn't mean reviving akhlaq. Reviving akhlaq is reviving the essence of deen, and therefore reviving it in ourselves and reviving it, inshallah, in our families and in our children. And when we speak about marriage and when we teach about marriage and when we live in marriage, it's through that paradigm of akhlaq. And that paradigm of akhlaq, by the way, you can apply to politics, you can apply it across the board in incredibly subtle and very sophisticated ways, because it is the lens by which we're meant to look at the world as Muslims. I'm going to stop, like a hard stop now, forgive me. If you have any reflections or questions, and then we close, inshallah ta'ala. Did you hear the question? So the idea of purpose, why I am here, and the idea of happiness. How do we, in our lives, in the different roles that we play, in the different situations that we are in, how do we make that a constant? How do we make that a constant? I think we could say, Allah knows, that part of that is to keep learning, ilm. A part of being a Muslim is a regular diet of ilm, a regular diet of beneficial knowledge. Because knowledge is the engine of action. I can't act outside of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants and loves. So I need to know that. So I need to learn about my role. I need to learn about who I am. I need to learn about what does it mean to be a Khalifa. Part of the answer is continuous learning. Learning about who I am, we only scratch the surface of it here. What does it mean that I have a nafs? What is a nafs? What are the types of nafs? What are the drives of those lower selves? How do I purify my heart to be a Khalifa? What's the importance of dhikr? How to be in dhikr? How do I strive and struggle in mujahada? And so part of the answer is to continue to learn. Because by simply hearing it once, that I am a ruh, I am a qalb, I'm meant to be a Khalifa, and the highest happiness is the happiness of my heart, that's not enough. I must deepen my knowledge on these concepts, number one. Number two is, I have to do. The more that I strive to purify my heart, the more I will realize that I am a heart. The more that I do, the more I will know by experience. Are you with me? The more that I purify my heart and cleanse it through dhikr and salah and dua and siyam and sadaqah and khidmah, the more I do that, the more amal I make, the more my heart will be cleansed. The more it's cleansed, the more it will feel. The more it feels, the more it will know. It will know by experience. It won't only know by knowing. I will know I'm a qalb, because I will feel it. I will feel and experience what it means to be in salah, for example. And then I will know the reality of salah, of the realities, astaghfirullah, of the realities of salah. I will know what it's like to be in remembrance of Allah as much as I can. And I will connect with Allah Ta'ala. And I will see Allah Ta'ala working in my life. And then I will know experientially that I am a ruh, that I am a qalb. So there's a difference between knowing and experiencing. And the more that I struggle to beautify my akhlaq, the more I will experience the fruits of what it is to live the life of a Khalifa. So part of that is knowing, to acting, which leads to experiential knowing. I know with my heart. It's like, how do I know what honey is if I've never seen it or tasted it? You bring me honey. Actually, before that, you describe to me honey. You tell me, this is what it looks like. This is how it's made. This is its substance. This is its viscosity. It tastes like this depending on what flower you can extract the honey from, which bees, what flowers the bees, extract the pollen from. And so I know. But then you bring me honey and I see. That's different. That's a different knowing. Now I see honey. I can smell it. I can even put my finger in it. And I can see what it's like. And then the third knowing is what? I taste it. And it's all different levels of knowing. And the highest level of knowing is what? I experience honey. I taste it. Like that with deen. To know I'm a soul, to know that my purpose is to be the Khalifa of Allah Ta'ala, to know that these are beautiful akhlaq, that's the starting point. And then as I continue on my journey, it becomes wijdani, it becomes experiential. And then the intellectual proofs of Allah Ta'ala's existence, which are good to know, those intellectual proofs become experiential. That's why they say, أَن تَعْبُدَ اللَّهَ كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ. You worship Allah as though you see Him. You don't need a logical syllogism. You don't need a rational argument. They're good. They have their benefits, indeed. But you don't need that. It's like your heart sees it. It's in yaqeen. It has certainty. So part of that, hafidakumullah, more knowledge, more practice of knowledge, until it becomes experiential. And lastly, the fact that I have a ruh, and that I have a soul, that I'm meant to be a Khalifa, and beautiful akhlaq, this is a constant in my life. This colors the way I am as a mother, as a father, as a husband, as a brother, as a worker, as a teacher. It colors everything I do. This is the essential. My and your essential job, if you can call it that, is to be a Khalifa. The other job, the other identities are all secondary. Allah is not going to ask me, oh, you were a neurologist. Allah's not going to ask me that. Allah's not going to say, oh, you were an international lawyer. Oh, you were a teacher. Allah's going to ask me, ultimately, what's the state of your qalb? يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Allah will say, what's your qalb like? Show me your qalb. What, is it sound? Is it beautiful? Is it healthy? Is it adorned with the beautiful akhlaq? That's the final argument. That's the ultimate hujjah. The qalb that I bring to Allah Ta'ala. And being a doctor, being this, being a homeschooling mother, all of that are means by which, created means by which I'm meant to be a Khalifa. Are you with me? All of those are means, they're not ends. This is the main objective. Abd of Allah, Khalifa of Allah Ta'ala. Those all are means that Allah creates for me to take that path, including gender. Why did Allah make me male? Why did Allah make you female? Means, not end, means to connect to Him. Something about your soul in that body is going to be benefited by that makeup to reach Him. Something in your soul, in that reality, is a means to connect to Him. In those means, not in other means. He created the best means to reach Him. all means to reach Him. So the other identities, the other things that we do in life, the other pursuits, they're all means to connect to Allah Ta'ala. Having a qalb, and in this sense, being an abd, a servant of Allah, and being a khalif of Allah is the bedrock of everything. It's the basis, the constant. The rest are variables, mostly variables, not gender, but how many of you worked in this field, and then that field, and then that field, and then that field, and you had some kids, and then the kids grew up, and they left, and some stayed. All the variable vicissitudes of life change. Nothing is constant. La hal tadum. No condition stays the same. Nothing. Everything changes. And everything is just meant to be a means to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam. So, the ulama, they say the greatest obstacle between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your own nafs. Of the statements that they make is أعدى أعدائك نفسك التي بين جنبيك. They say the most inveterate, the most hostile enemy of yours is the nafs, your self, your ego, that's between your two sides. Meaning the ego inside of you, the nafs inside of you. They say that because Shaitan himself was corrupted by his own ego. Shaitan himself was corrupted by his own nafs. He became Shaitan because of his own nafs. Therefore, the nafs is a greater enemy than Shaitan. Shaitan operates on my nafs, but ultimately, it's my nafs. If I didn't have a nafs, a lower self with its ugly akhlaq, Shaitan would not be able to operate on me. The nafs doesn't like to change. The nafs doesn't like to change. Change is hard. Change is challenging. Change takes time. Change takes effort. Change is bitter. The nafs doesn't like to change. The nafs likes its beautiful akhlaq, depending on the sort of nafs I have. Part of the science of tazkiyah is, what are the different states of my nafs, so that I can know who I am. I could have a nafs that is very hedonistic, a nafs that is very predatory, a nafs that is shaitanic, a nafs that is angelic, or a combination of all of them. Those nufus, plural of nafs, those base selves, it doesn't want to change. And therefore, it wants to criticize. It wants to stonewall. It wants to be defensive. It wants to project blame on others, as opposed to changing. That's the nature of the nafs. In that sense, it's a universal, not ideally or uniquely Turkish challenge. It is a universal challenge. Everyone has a nafs, and everyone has this tendency. And the tendency is to project blame and fault on others, not to change myself, depending on, again, the corruptedness of myself. Sometimes, if it's not that bad, some critique I'll accept, but some I won't. But sometimes I can be blind to almost all of what I am. I can be arrogant, I can be rude, vulgar, I can be ungrateful, and so when things are grateful, I don't see that. I can project my circumstance on others. Part of, as Muslims, as we are, so will we be ruled. Allah is not unjust to us. When we're faced with challenges as an ummah and as individuals, we have to ask, what are we doing wrong? Any society, it's as true of a society as it is of an individual. The social question is, what are we as a society and individuals doing wrong that this challenge has come, this difficulty has come? Yes, recession and inflation has material components, for sure. And the Sharia recognizes that. And there are ways to analyze that. There's also, beyond the material dimension, a spiritual dimension. What are we doing in our relationship to Allah Ta'ala? Sometimes Allah Ta'ala sends challenges because of our dhunub. Because of our dhunub. If we're not fasting in Ramadan, and openly and brazenly not fasting, that's considered one of the worst transgressions to ever be done in the Shara. One of the worst transgressions, when it's open like that. What are the consequences of that? What are the punishments for that? Do we think that we can be unjust and then demand justice? Do you think we can be unjust and demand goodness from Allah Azza wa Jal? Allah Ta'ala is generous, Allah is fair, Allah is good. What are we doing? And our collective nufus, our collective egos, veil us from asking that collective question. In the same way that our individual ego veils me from asking the individual question. If society is based on mostly base, low egos, then that society will act, will interact based on the collective sum of its, based on the sum of its collective egoistic identity. So we may not ask the right questions. We may not see the right answers. We may not see the real reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing what we do. And we may not be grateful for what we have. And I can tell you honestly, Ya'lamullah, someone who's lived in the West, in North America, that the ni'am, the bounties of being a Muslim here are incredible. You know, the coefficient of the good things, the coefficient of all the good things here in Turkey, in Istanbul, far outweighs the challenges that do exist for a Muslim, for a believer of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, this morning, there it is, adhan. Do you know how precious the adhan is? Do you know what a ni'mah it is in a society to have the adhan called? And so beautifully. So beautifully. What a ni'mah. You know, I would give up a lot, you know, just to be in a society where I could hear that reminder, Allah calling me 5 times a day to Him, subhanahu. What a ni'mah. The coefficients of the ni'mah that we have, we don't either recognize the ni'mah and we don't assign them the right coefficient values. Even if we, you know, some of these beautiful ni'am, the freedom to live compared to Canada. Trust me, Canada is not that free. Freedom of expression, not that free. Freedom of religion, not that free as you think. Alhamdulillah, free, but not like here. You know, not like here. Freedom of association, free, but not like here. Trust me. Freedom of Islamic symbols and expressions of spirituality, free, but not like here by any measure. Sometimes because we're veiled, we don't see the value of these things, which for a Muslim are very, very valuable in my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what it means for my true quest, not of material happiness, but of spiritual happiness and spiritual freedom. Wallahu a'lam. So, remember we said that marriage, like life, is an expression of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Jamal, His beauty, and His Jalal, His majesty. All of life. And Jamal are those attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are beautiful. And Jalal are those attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are powerful, that are majestic. Okay. Now, what attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are attributes of Jamal? Allah is Al-Kareem, the generous. Allah is An-Nur, the source of light. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Mu'ti, the one who gives. Allah ta'ala is Al-Basit, the one that expands, and so forth. What are the characteristics of Allah ta'ala's Jalal? Allah ta'ala is Al-Azim, the tremendous. Allah ta'ala is Al-Qabid, the one who constricts. Allah ta'ala is Al-Mani', the one who prevents. Allah ta'ala is Al-Jalil, the one who is sublime. Now, in a marriage, like in life, I'm meant to recognize those names and attributes expressed in creation. I look outside, I see the rain. What does the rain remind me of the attributes of Allah? First of all, of course, everything in life is an expression of Allah Ta'ala's actions. And those actions are an expressions of His names and attributes. So when Allah Ta'ala sends rain, what do you think are the attributes or attributes associated with that rain? Allah is Al-Razaq. Allah is Al-Mu'ti, the provider, the giver. So I see rain. Now I can just see rain. And the materialist says rain. You know, evaporation, condensation, etc. That's all they see. The believer sees that and sees Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's act and the expression of Ar-Razaq, the expression of Al-Mu'ti, the expression of Al-Wahhab. Like that in marriage. What in marriage is an expression of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's gifts? Al-Wahhab. Baby. Not just one, it could be multiple expressions of names and attributes. It could be, it could be a medley of Allah Ta'ala's names and attributes. When I see a baby, well, for those who say Al-Quddus means holy or sacred, it has the meaning of purity. Al-Quddus, pure, therefore sacred. A baby. Have you smelled a baby? Have you smelled a baby? Do you know what the baby smell is? No. A baby smell, the smell of a child, the smell of a baby. You guys know what baby smells like, right? Each babies have this smell, right? They all come with this smell. It's called baby smell. It's a word. It's incredible. It's incredible. The purity of a child. The purity of a child, the beauty of a child, the innocence of a child. The way Allah fashioned that child to imprison you in every way. You're imprisoned. You even speak nonsense. You even speak to the child in nonsense. And you don't care even if there are other adults there. You know, the child just makes a cry, and what do? You run. You run. Grown men holding the baby, kissing the baby, playing with the baby, missing the baby. So there's something in marriage. What does it express of Allah's names and attributes? Many names and attributes of them, the idea of purity, Al-Quddus, purity. Now that in marriage connects you to Allah Ta'ala. Now marriage is filled with life multiplied, you could say. Marriage is like life exponentified, I don't know. Marriage is just like microcosm of so much of life in just this unit. You're gonna child, raising teenagers, a lot of jalal there, a lot of jalal. Allah Ta'ala is gonna show you what? His qahr. You can't do anything about it. Try your best. It's going to take its course. Al-Jabbar, Al-Qahar. You have to be patient. And then you see, yeah, how much control do I really have over those that I really love? Zero. Allah's in charge, right? And acts of service, you know, when you think of some of our grandparents and what their akhlaq were like, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, of khidmah, of service, of preferring others to themselves, sacrifice in ways that you can never imagine, that the modern man and woman can't touch. We're so removed from some of those akhlaq, the level of sacrifice, the level of giving. We can't comprehend it even now, these days. We can't comprehend it with what we are, with what we've become. What they could give, a human being could give of sacrifice and not demand anything in return. You know, my grandmother never asked for vacation. I'm just mentioning that as an example. She never asked for time off. She never asked for vacation. She never asked for time off. She never asked for time with friends. It's not haram, it's perfectly legitimate. And it might even be mustahab to do that. And sometimes maybe even wajib to take time out. Yes, but she never asked for that. She never asked for clothes. She never asked for anything. And she worked day and night, selflessly. You can't imagine what Allah gave her of rahmah, what Allah gave her of birr, of that khuluq. So you see that reflected in her and in all of married life. And in married life, you're going to have reflected and you're going to be tested in the most intimate, personal, delicate, incredible ways. Going to have parts of you come out that would never come out, but would rarely come out except in marriage. You know, you're going to be tested in ways, and you're going to see parts of you that you wished you never saw, but alhamdulillah that you saw. And you can change, and you can know what lies under the deep of your qalb, what lies under the deep of your nafs, what emerged at that moment. So marriage, and because so much of our lives are now spent as we become married, children, marriage, at home, with spouse, with challenge, with that, it's a beautiful opportunity. If we change the way in which we see marriage, with that spiritual lens, to see and experience more of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we can. I don't think you're going to find in any institution, most institutions, rahmah expressed as it is expressed in marriage. The expressions, it seems, in marriage are very powerful and vivid. And because you're part of that, you know, that suhba, that very personal suhba, it's more powerful, it's more impactful when you see it. When your spouse says something or does something, it has, you know, a very powerful effect, more, I find, than sometimes just a friend or a sahib. So, looked at marriage in that way, that's very healthy. That's a very healthy, beautiful, optimistic way to see marriage. Allah is introducing Himself to me through marriage. Allah is introducing Himself to me through marriage. Secondly, whether one should stay in a marriage or whether one should or must leave a marriage is a verdict of the Sharia. It's not subjective. It's not I decide. Nothing in my life should be subjective. Everything in my life should be me surrendering to the lawgiver, subhanahu. Me surrendering to the secondary lawgiver, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So my choices, what to do, what not to do, my omissions, my commissions, all of that is based on what does Allah love and what does He will. So, after analyzing a given marriage, analyzing it properly, using Shari'i analysis at different levels, then, a hukm is given, that it's wajib to leave a marriage. And there could be instances where it's wajib to leave a marriage. Could be instances where it's makruh, it's detestable, There could be harm, but bearable harm, for example. Some shari'i analysis that says there's harm, but it's bearable harm. So anyway, divorce is always permissible, right? But it could be makruh, it could be merely permissible to leave a marriage. It could be, mustahab to leave, it could be wajib to leave. It could be wajib to leave. I think I started in the wrong way. It could be wajib to leave, it could be mustahab to leave, it could be permissible to leave, it could be makruh to leave, it could be haram to leave, or vice versa, haram to go, etc. We could look at it in the other way too. It's a shari'i hukm. To the extent that one can remain, one should remain. To the extent that one can remain, one should remain, especially when children are involved. So when children are involved, now it becomes, even more important to stay. Even more important than to stay, unless from a shari'i perspective, you should not stay. The harm in a shari'i analysis, again, a shari'i analysis says you should leave or that it's good to leave. In which case, even though they are children, you should leave or you must leave. But if you can absorb that when there's children involved, then it's better for you to stay, because the harm to the children of a divorce is substantial. And sometimes, inshallah, in staying, even though the other side is not changing, as we said, or even though the other side is negative but is bearable, there's a lot of khair in that. There's a lot of khair in sabr, by the way. Something that maybe in our society we've lost sight of. It has to be an instant gratification. There's no idea of sabr. We've lost the idea of patience. So if I don't like it, I leave it. That's how we are now. I don't like it, I leave it. It's not I don't like it, I stay. I don't like it, I'm patient. That concept, I don't think we have anymore in marriages. The old marriages, they weren't perfect, but they were a lot more durable and resilient than modern marriages. In part because people had responsibilities, they felt accountable, and they had patience. Partly that's the reason. They had more akhlaq, and they could make it work, even though they didn't get everything they wanted. They sacrificed for a higher cause, and Allah will give you spiritually much more through that than you think you've lost because you don't have the marriage of your dreams. In that shari'i analysis in which it's good to stay, you will get more. You will get closer to Allah Ta'ala. There's a lot that will happen to refine you and polish you into a spiritual jewel, even when you have to have a lot of sabr. Because the vision of marriage, again, is not merely material, right? The happiness of marriage is not material happiness only. It's also that wider spiritual dimension. Marriage is a vehicle for my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even if the other side doesn't change, hafidhakillah, it doesn't mean you should walk away. Continue. And you never know if the other side is not committed to tazkiyah. And most marriages are not like that, by the way. Most marriages are, one is committed, one is not, by the way. One is committed, one is semi-committed. It's rare that both are fully committed. That's rare. Or that's nurun ala nur, that's ideal. But usually marriages are not like that. Different levels of commitment. Some completely uncommitted. But alhamdulillah, good enough. Good enough husbands, good enough wives. Others are very committed. And they have naturally tensions because of that level of commitment. But that's khair. That's how Allah intended it to be. And you never know. With a lot of dua, sometimes the other person can rise to that level of commitment, especially when we ponder how long it took us to change. It's easy to say, well, why don't you change? Well, look at me. How long did it take me to change? I look at my kids when I don't want them to do things that are not haram, that are, better to avoid. Sometimes when I get really worked up, I think what I was like when I was that age. And then I think, how long did it take me to change my idea of that issue? And sometimes it's quite recent, like a few years ago. And then I think, so I'm expecting them to be me with all my experience a few years ago. How fair is that? Be patient, Riyad. Hold it, be patient. Overlook, right? Overlook. They didn't have the opportunity of tens and tens of years of experience in life. They're just 15 or 16 or 17. And that helps you have rahmah for the other side. They didn't have that opportunities. Allah Ta'ala didn't give them an opening, and then a lot of dua for them, a lot of dua for them. And then kill them with kindness. Kill them with beautiful akhlaq. Kill their nafs. Kill their nafs with beautiful ihsani akhlaq. And then they'll become waliyun hamim. Bi-idhnillah, they'll change after time. They will change. Most of us are definitely affected by goodness over time. We can't keep rejecting goodness. If we have a grain of conscience, we will start to feel very guilty, and that'll catalyze a change, inshallah, for the better, bi-idhnillah. So we would say this, if your partner, if your husband or wife, to get back to original language, if your husband or wife, I have to catch myself because I slip into that too. If your husband or wife is threatening the iman of the children, you can't have a soulful connection with them. That's not soulful connection. That can't be. If a husband is threatening the iman of his children, the wife and him can't be soulfully connected. If they are connected, it's nafsani connected. They're connected at baser, lower egotistic levels. Number two is, yes, if, after, again, I say this because, of some experience where if you start counseling, those who are counselors would know that the truth is never with him or her. The truth lies somewhere in between. I just say that because of this importance of the full picture and a proper Shari'i analysis of what's happening. How many times, if you've counseled, you've heard his story, and then you've said he's right. Then you hear her story, and you say, she's right. And then you say, who's right? One never, ever builds a judgment on one side. Never. No matter how convincing that side is. And sometimes there are cases where someone would say, I was abused, I was hit, I was violently attacked, crying, seemingly earnestly, only to find out later that they're the abuser. It's happened more than once to me personally. And then I learned that if you only listen to one side, you can only have a question mark. And you can only advise to the extent that if it is true and in a general way without making a determination about the marriage. So, if after a proper Shari'i analysis, a proper Shari'i analysis, one partner, the husband or wife, is jeopardizing the faith of the children, yes, then divorce would in that case theoretically be a solution. Maybe even more than a solution, maybe something mandatory. But sometimes the harm may not be that. It's that in one person's assessment, but it's not that in objective reality. Are you with me? Because marriages are emotions, attitudes, feelings, history, baggage, hurt, all of that is interwound. And sometimes it's not like one side is not telling the truth. It's sort of telling their truth. But it's a truth that's not really objective. It's just wound up with their experience, their perception, their emotions, both husband and wife. So the question is this: what is the level of harm on the child? What is it from a Shari'i perspective? Both short-term, long-term, right? Is it such a level of harm that yes, they should separate? And yeah, there are cases like that, where the relationship is so antagonistic and so harmful that it really affects the children in terrible ways, not necessarily at the level of losing their faith, but really, it really damages the children. In those cases, it could very well be that marriage, that divorce is the better option than staying together in that animosity and harming the children. It could very well be. Or is the harm less than that? Meaning the harm to the children is a harm that is, you could say, not significant. Bearable in the sense that one can push past this. Are there ways to minimize the harm by staying married? Is there a way to do that? That should be explored too. You know, the solution is not married, stay married. The solution could be married, but, you know, reformat that relationship differently. Did they do enough of proper spiritual counseling? Did they do enough of that? Or did they not even do that? Were enough people involved who could impact the marriage that should have been involved? If it's a man, people that he trusts, can they be involved? There are many things. And after all of that, if the harm is, in that Shari'i sense, serious, yes, then the best course may very well be divorce. And maybe that's beloved, that's more beloved to Allah at that point is divorce. Yes. But only after I say this, because in some experience, we often rush this. It's rushed. It's rushed. It's not done objectively. It's not done by a Shari'i standard. And it's very nafsani. And sometimes the reasons are not good reasons. And then it's to the harm of the children, not to their benefit. Wallahu a'lam. So the question is, finding a prospective husband or wife, how do you know if they're the right person with the right akhlaq? Is that fair? Okay. So we would say number one is the rules in the Sharia about how to get married. Those rules maximize your chance to really know the akhlaq of the other person. I'm going to start with that. Meaning the Sharia, what does the Sharia say about how to get married? Right? What steps does it advise? I'm going to mention some of them. You know, get your parents involved, especially if your parents are people of khair. They should be part of that process. That's part of the Shari'i prescriptions of seeking a spouse. Two is, don't spend khalwa time with them. Don't spend private time with them, going out, going eating, going shopping, on the phone, on WhatsApp, you know, when you're not married. And there are others, but I'm going to mention those two. Because your parents can find out about the akhlaq. of the boy in ways that you cannot. Your parents can find out through their circles, and it's the job of your father to find out more and to dig about who the brother is, what his background is, who his family is, who his friends are. And he needs to do that research, which generally is very difficult for a woman to do. Number two, you have the benefit of their experience. If you have Allah-loving parents, they know you and they know him. So forgive me for saying this, but maybe it's powerful. You'll be shocked at some level, and then you won't forget it. One of my teachers would say, he said, it takes a fox to know a fox. It takes a fox to know a fox, meaning it takes a man to know a man. His point being that your father should be involved in figuring out who this boy is. Because you as a woman would not be able to, in most cases, unless you were married, I think, you will not be able to truly understand the male mind and the male way. But your father can. It takes a fox to know a fox, as he said. So you might think the fox is a lamb. You might think a fox is, mashallah, I don't know, a very gallant lion, but he's just a fox. So your father being involved, or your uncle, or those that you trust being involved in the process, really helps. It will help you understand their akhlaq. By that background, by the checking, by the meeting, by them meeting him, spending time with them, or you can get a friend to do that, a friend of the family. Take him out for lunch, spend time with him, dig, tell me what you find, right? Number two is, if you do that by yourself, meaning you take upon that by yourself, I'm going to make the choice, I'm going to get to know him, I'm going to text him a lot and spend time with him, etc. All you will be most likely is emotionally influenced by him. And if he is a fox, or if he is in some way, charming, you will be negatively influenced by that and not see negative akhlaq. And it happens all the time. And there's a reason why, for most of the ulama, la nikaha bi ghayri wali. There's no valid marriage without the permission of the wali. That's part of the reason. For most of the ulama, most of the madahib, a marriage is not valid without the wali saying yes. So those are ways, if you obey the shara, you'll get to know his character more. Thirdly, yes, when you meet him, when you meet him, you're going to have to meet him and see him, in the right shari'i circumstance, ideally. What you're looking for, you and your father and your uncle and your brother, in this detective work of akhlaq, is you're looking for red flag akhlaq. Red flag. You're going to find, inshallah, if he's a good person, some green flags. You're going to find some yellow flags. Yellow flag akhlaq means it's an issue of concern. An issue of concern. Yellow doesn't mean don't go forward. But a lot of yellow could be a problem. A lot of yellow. But yellow by itself, it's an issue of concern. I register that. I file that. You're looking for red flags. Red flags means don't go any further. So basically, in the meetings, in the background check, in the assessment, you have in your mind, an idea of akhlaq, which you have to, and that's part of learning. If I'm not looking for akhlaq, and most of us are not, Most of us are not looking for akhlaq, trust me. We're looking for all kinds of things that are irrelevant to a marriage. Look how nice he dresses, he smiles, he's educated, he's a doctor. What does that have to do with anything in terms of the akhlaqi sense? Oh, he's charming, Oh, look, he gave money to the beggar. Yeah, it could be just giving money to a beggar, so you go, oh, wow, he's generous, right? But you're looking for a picture of him that's mostly good, without red flags. And red flags could be things like what? Like what? What's a red flag? Not delaying it. If he delays it, he's still praying. Meaning, he delays it in his waqt. I mean, I don't pray dhuhr at 1:15, I pray it at 4. I'm still praying it. That's okay. That's not a red flag. A red flag is he doesn't pray. That's a red flag. And don't think you're going to change him. You don't change him. He doesn't change you. You take him as you get him. You assume that guy, that's my husband for life. No changes. Can I live with him? If you can say yes, Bismillah. If you're like, well, I'm going to change this, and this, no. That means, his current state is who he is. So, no praying, red flag. Don't even look at him. What else?
Shaking hands. Shaking hands.
Shaking hands with a woman? I wouldn't say that's a red flag. Yeah, I wouldn't say that's, I would say that that's like a yellow flag. I wouldn't say that's a red flag, but why does he do that? Because I know people who shake women's hands when they have to, when they find that, it's uncomfortable to do that. I know people who do that, and they're good people. And yes, I would marry my daughter to them. But they don't do it in terms of, they're not flirtatious. That's different. That's different. So it's fine. If you have that standard, there's no problem with a red flag. Just as long as you don't have such high standards that everything is a red flag, in which case you may not get married. But if that's a red flag, fine. I would say that's an issue of concern. I would like to know why he does that. And is that an indicator of a laxity in dealing with the opposite gender? Easy? Does he have female friends? Does he go out with girls? Does he go out with groups with women and he's very easy with that idea? That I would feel very uncomfortable. That's a red flag for me. This one is like a yellow flag. And it could be dealt with. Wallahu a'lam, that's how I would see it. He smokes. For me, that's a red flag. That's it. You smoke? No. For me, that's a red flag. That's very serious. Trying to figure what's halal and haram, see, that's very general. You want something specific. What does it mean?
Money or
So he doesn't care whether he makes haram money. If you have evidence of that, that's a red flag. He doesn't care. He consumes money from haram and he's not worried about that. That's definitely a red flag. Well, you know what I mean. And on some of these issues, there's going to be, like on the issue of the shaking hands, or I'm not going to mention other ones because I don't want to dilute it for you. But on this case, okay, khalas, some would say red, some would say yellow, need to follow up, need to know more. What does this indicate towards more? Because it could also be a cultural thing. And then that's not necessarily indicative of overall bad akhlaq. It could be that. Wallahu a'lam. Maybe I'm too soft, but I think that's what I would do. Afwan. And so that's the gist. Any red flags? And then if there are red flags, and you don't want to compromise yourself emotionally, and you compromise yourself emotionally if you do it yourself. It happens all the time. Now you're too compromised. You spend time with him, spend time with her, chatted, got to know about them, went out. You fell for him, he fell for you. At that point, it doesn't matter what people say. You will not walk away. At that point, once you've tipped over, point of no return, attraction of no return, liking of no return, usually because we didn't follow the shara. We didn't follow the shara properly. And therefore, we compromised our best interest, and now you're emotionally compromised. Khalas, you're going to accept. Almost nothing you can say is going to change. Trust me. You can give all the arguments. They're going to do it. She's going to do it. He's going to do it. It doesn't matter. Now it's only a facade of seeking opinion from your parents. It's a rubber stamp. You just want them to say yes. If they say no, you won't be able to take it. You won't be able to walk away. That happens. That happens all the time. And then you compromise what's good for you. If you weren't emotionally attached, you could walk away. The brother I know, wonderful brother, mashallah, very dear to me. When he was in university, he liked his sister. And he really liked his sister. They were part of the MSA. And then she got married to someone else, And then he told me, he said, I liked her. I really liked her. And I was about to ask her to get married. But I didn't do anything improper in the shara. I just, in the interactions within the MSA, were very cordial, business-like, wasn't personal, wasn't very private. I knew her from that. And he said, subhanallah, it was so easy to accept that she married someone else. I'm fine. I didn't get wounded, didn't get emotionally scarred, didn't get emotionally marred, didn't get emotionally broken. He said, alhamdulillah, because I did it. He said, because I think I did it. Allah knows the right way. And then he found his wife. Alhamdulillah, he found his wife. That's for your benefit, for your benefit, for our benefit, for the parents' benefit, for the larger society's benefit, to do it in a way that Allah loves. If you do it in a way that Allah loves, Allah will find you someone He loves. If you do it in a way Allah doesn't love, be careful. He may not find you someone that He loves. Or He may, out of rahmah for you. But if you do it in the way that Allah loves, most likely, no guarantee, most likely, most probabilistically, it'll be someone who's good with good akhlaq. And some of this akhlaq, you're going to have a difference. When you have a difference, you can speak to someone. When I have a difference on these issues, and I think when I'm not sure, is this red or yellow, I speak to Sheikh Mukhtar. And then I've learned sometimes from him what he sees to be red and I thought was yellow. By the standards of the shara. These are not just yellow, red. How would the shara see this issue in the broader context and priorities of akhlaq? And sometimes I thought this was a red. And he said, no, it's yellow. Keep it in mind, but it's not a make or break. Sometimes it happened and we went to, the issue went ahead. May Allah Ta'ala give you, inshallah, the taqwa and the basira and the insight, all of you, to inshallah find someone with, alhamdulillah, good akhlaq, overall good akhlaq. Never be perfect. There'll always be yellow flags. Our brother once said, I met her, there's only red flags, Riyadh. I know, there's only green flags everywhere. He said, there's not one, because no red flags, no yellow flags. I said, are you sure? He goes, yeah, it's perfect. I said, impossible. I thought, impossible. And then, 2 weeks later, she's insisting on, $20,000 mahr. He goes, what is that? I said, it's probably red flag. There's your red flag. There's your red flag. Yeah, that's a red flag. I think one could say that, first of all, everything is about akhlaq. If we've done this, everything is about akhlaq. What I do, what I don't do, has a basis, has a moral basis. So I think smoking is about akhlaq. Number two is yes, I think you're right. I think people can, by view of their social circle, get involved in smoking. But by view of their social circle, can do all kinds of things that are not proper. They do it simply because others do it. There is a view, hafidhakumullah, that smoking is permitted or makruh, but in light of modern evidence, I think that opinion is simply, and forgive me, I try to be very cautious about saying something is haram. But I think that view that smoking is allowed is absolutely unsustainable given modern scientific data. Absolutely. What we know now of the harms of smoking, scientifically, statistically, documented, tens of thousands of cases of people dying because of cancer, because of this, because of smoking. I think it's a very difficult argument to make because of what we know now. Maybe the ulama of old, they didn't have that data, but that data is important data. The level of harm determines whether it's haram or makruh. And so, based on what they knew back then, they said makruh, and they said makruh probably because of many factors. One is the smell, the unpleasantness. If it's makruh to come to a masjid because you have a mouth of garlic smell, imagine smoking. We have it all the time, and you're interacting with people. Plus the issue of money. Wasting money or spending money on something that has no benefit but harm, at least by way of unpleasantness. That's what they knew then. So on the basis of that data, some of them would have said, rahimahullah ta'ala, makruh. But now fast forward from what we know, and it's not evidence that's probabilistic. It's definitive evidence. Are you with me? You know what I mean? So qat'i is definitive, black and white. This is not like, it tends to commit, it tends to lead to serious harms. They say that smoking, qat'an leads to serious life-threatening, life-harming conditions and death. And this is what they say statistically. So if that's the case, then someone who smokes is committing either a major sin or a minor sin. How many times a day? 15? 20? 30? 40? 50? So if I commit a minor sin 30 times a day, it's a major sin because of israr. So it's a major sin committed every day. And therefore, hafidhakumullah, I think that if we are in a situation where we're tried with smoking, I think we should leave it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the hukm is that it is a serious sin. And I don't think you want to marry someone who's a smoker. I know family members who are, and I don't like to be with them, don't like to be near them. I would not pray next to them. Truly, if you're in the saf and someone is smoking, it's a musibah. It's so terrible. Can't imagine having more intimacy with someone who's a smoker. For a person with a personality that is salim. So for me it's red. It may not be for you, but for me it's red. Jazakumullah khairan. Right, and so the second question is true. Sometimes it's difficult to find out about someone's background, especially when you're not from that culture or from that background. So one of my son-in-laws was Turkish, and when he proposed to my daughter, I had no way of really finding out, even communicating with him, because I don't speak Turkish. And he didn't speak much English. So I was faced with the issue of how am I going to get to know this guy? And I had to find ways to do that. How am I going to know his family? So I asked a friend of ours, a close friend, find out about him. It's a Turkish brother here. Take him out for lunch. Dinner, he did it twice or so. Gave me a full report about him, and I trusted him. He was a very intelligent brother, the friend, and find out about his family, and he did. And they came from the same, they came from Trabzon, the same village in Trabzon or so, and they knew each other, and he was able to find out many things through that way. The point is, you try your best. You try your best. The background is important. The family is important. In the old days, you start with the family, and you come to the girl or boy last. It is important who the girl is and the boy is, but it's not most important. In the older days, it was the family that was important. So you start with that. You try to find ways as best as you can. If you can't, you can't. And if you can't, then it's an aspect that you don't have, that you have to factor into your analysis. It doesn't mean you don't go ahead. If you're sufficiently satisfied through other means of his akhlaq and comfort with the family. On the first point, yes, I think communities are different. In some communities, in some societies, cultural compatibility is important. And there is a place for that. The idea in fiqh of kafa'a, they're a match. Not a match in terms of deen, they should be with good akhlaq, but a match in terms of other aspects of what is important at that time. In usul al-fiqh, they call it basically urf. In that time, they marry usually among, this common class or common profession or common culture. They have that urf, they have that custom in that society. So it becomes an important part of the variable of marriage for them. And that's not necessarily bad. As I've learned now, as I grow older, it's not necessarily bad. It could be good to have that cultural match. It could be good. Number two is, it could be that even though we have a certain culture, we're not cultural. See, I'm born in South Africa. I'm Indian of original descent. But I have no culture of that. I don't have any Indian cultural practices that I follow. I don't have any South African cultural practices that I follow. I'm basically, a Westerner culturally in certain ways. So for me, it's not important really that I find for my daughter someone who's Indian, because it's not important to me. It's not part of my life. When my daughter marries someone who's a Turk, for example, there's not going to be any incompatibility of language. I don't speak Urdu. I don't speak Gujarati. I speak English. So that's not a factor. But in a family where they were culturally Indian, it is a factor. It's not the only factor, but finding someone who doesn't speak the language of your parents is a bit of a challenge. As I found out, because my son-in-law's parents don't speak English, and I don't speak Turkish. It is a factor. For them, it's probably more a factor than it is for me, because I don't have, if you like, a cultural background to fall back on. So in some cases, culture is irrelevant. Muslims who are born in the United States, they are Pakistani, they're not Pakistani really. They're American. A father told me, why is my son keep saying no to Pakistani sisters? I bring him all these sisters, some of them are scholars, and he keeps saying no. And he keeps saying no. What's wrong with our Pakistani sisters? I spoke to the son. I do not want to marry a Pakistani, period. No, absolutely not. Why? I don't want to. I want to marry outside my culture. In that case, he's not Pakistani. His father is. His father has an emotional attachment, a cultural attachment to Pakistan. His son doesn't. His son is American, born in the States. He could marry anyone, and there's no cultural incompatibility. Are you with me? There's no cultural incompatibility. He could marry a Syrian, he could marry an Egyptian, be the same probably he wants to more likely find someone, if he values that, who was born in the States or born in the West, versus someone who comes from the original home country and is very strongly cultural. It depends. The point being, it depends. In some cultures, it is important because it serves a maslahah, it serves a benefit. And in some cultures, it may not be, because it doesn't serve a maslahah and a benefit. But it is an understandable part of what parents want. Trust me. Fair enough. It is understandable. They want more compatibility as much as they can. And so sometimes they're fair to ask for that. Sometimes they do that unjustly, meaning they would compromise in finding someone not good, but of that culture. That happens a lot too. Versus someone who's good, but not of that culture. Someone who's good, but not of that culture would be better than someone who's not good from that culture in terms of if you had to choose between the two. And sometimes people don't want their culture. My teacher, Sheikh Mu'adh, he used to say to me, you know, that's so boring. Yeah, it's so boring. You marry someone from your own culture. That's so boring. Don't you want an interesting life? Don't you want to marry someone from some other culture and have an interesting life? Well, it depends. If you want, you know, the variety and diversity, yes. But maybe you don't want that. Maybe your nature is, I want someone who cooks my food. You know, for sure. Doesn't have to learn. Maybe you want someone like that. It depends. So this issue, it depends. Sometimes it's important, sometimes it's not, and it's also very personal. Wallahu a'lam.
I'll speak to you.
Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah Ta'ala bless you. Please forgive me for the extended time we have together. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka Allahumma wa natubu ilayk. I just point you to, if any of you might be interested in the program of the Suhba Seminary, either the 1-year program or the 5-year program. We have the prospectus at the door, some copies for you to see and perhaps peruse the program. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.